Drew is just having some difficulty getting into the meeting.
Okay. Well, we'll let Drew join us. It's now 7:02 and we're live streaming. I will officially call our meeting to order. So thank you everyone for joining us. I really appreciate everyone here today, and it's great to see everybody again. It's been since August, I think, our last meeting. So thank you very much for joining us. Like I said, I think as Stacy said, Drew is still trying to join us. But just before we get started, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of working with Stacy Lowe, Stacy's one of our senior leadership. And Stacy, I do apologize, I've forgotten your new title.
New title is Executive Director of Protective and Community Services.
Right. So in addition to our CAO, we now have 3 executive directors that are leading the organization, and then new management falling out from there as part of a reorganization. And so Stacy's been with the organization for 12 years, but has been one of our key leadership members for most of that time. So we're just going to do a little bit of a switch up. She's now the lead for community services, which is where this committee is kind of falling under the responsibility right now. So everyone, Ms. Lowe and Stacy, this is the amazing Parks and Recreation Committee. So thank you, everybody. And then Drew gets in, we'll go from there. So first things first then, we do have quorum by my count. So we've called the meeting to order. In looking at our agenda, if anybody has any comments, let me know. I do have the chat turned on the side, or just speak up. But I think we're good for the agenda. So with no comments, then if we could get a motion to adopt the agenda. Hands are volunteered. So Dawn's volunteering to put that on the agenda again. Excellent. Thank you, Dawn. Everyone in favor? Okay, as always, I'm watching for hands, but unless I hear a nay, I'm assuming it's a yes. So we've passed that unanimously. Okay, then moving on to look at our previous minutes. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes from August 3rd, so it was a while ago. Just as a summary, we kind of got the update from Urban Systems about where we were at with the Horse Creek Sports Park. And that was endorsed by the committee to present to council. And then kind of an update of where we were at. And then from there, our world moved into the re-election phase. So does anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes of the August 3rd meeting?
Yes, I do, Tara.
Yes, go ahead, Lou.
On the round table, just to clarify, I noted that the men's walking group started up again in July after the COVID shutdown. In 2 weeks, they grew to 126 participants. That's not true. In 2 weeks, we had 126 walk participants. That's 126 people walking. Okay. Not say members per se, but I had 126 walks in lieu of participants.
Okay, I think we can amend the minutes to reflect that. Karen, do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Anyone else? No, looks good. Okay, then can I get a motion to adopt the previous minutes as amended? And Leah. Oh, yeah, Leah. Leah's making that motion. Excellent. All in favor? Okay, it appears to be passed unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. So, there's Peggy. Okay, so moving on to our agenda. Stacy, Drew hasn't managed to join us yet, hey?
No, the link is not working. It keeps telling him, he's sending me screenshots of his computer screen. It's saying that the meeting hasn't started yet. So I'm just trying to coach him through getting to Zoom without clicking the link and just opening to join a new meeting and adding it there.
Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes to coach, because Drew can give us the sports park progress update. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And maybe what we'll do then is we'll just jump ahead in the agenda, and I'll just speak to the council priorities at this point, if that works for everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
So yeah, so just as an overview, last time we met was the beginning of August. Shortly in September, of course, we entered the electoral cycle, and administration focused on running the government, and the rest of us focused on getting reelected. So it was a busy campaign cycle. We had 19 candidates running for council. No one ran for mayor. So what I think our council really feels is an endorsement of our work is council was returned in full, and with 19 people running for office. So it was quite an endorsement we felt of the work that we were doing. It's really providing us a very rare opportunity to jump back into governance. So my experience, of course, you're first elected to council, it can take a year to year and a half to really figure out your job and your lane. And so we've really managed to save that time by having everyone return to council. Everybody knows their lane, and we're focused on the work that we started last term and carrying on with that. So yeah, it's an extremely rare opportunity, and we're quite excited about it. Normally what happens after an election is you go into a council retreat, and there's required training for new councillors to get you up to speed and orientated. But what we did was use that 3 days as a reboot renewal. I think I've lost the word we were using, but we really did just spend those 3 days focusing on the governance, how we work together, and what we really want to accomplish over the next 4 years. So we jumped right back into it fairly aggressively right after the election. Following that, we are also started the budget cycle. And you may have seen that in the news. Also, if you have time and interest, it is on our website, all of the budget information. And so this is it's an interesting year. I'm scared if I hear myself twice. But it's with the budget, what right now the budget that administration has presented to council and what we're working through right now is an opportunity to reset our organization and make sure that it's prepared to govern and lead and provide the services we need for what we are now, which is a population of about 34,000, which makes us about the 15th largest municipality in the province, just for context. But to be able to provide the services for that, but also the fact that at build out with our current annexation, we're looking at a population of about 50 to 55,000. And so we need to make sure that we have the organization in place, the staff and leadership to successfully deliver the community that people want. Cochrane has always been, we've always been take great pride in our visionary aspects and leading, and we want to be a step above and offer a very high quality of life to our residents and draws people here. So a big focus of the budget that administration brought to council was around that. And so for the first time, we are really talking about a tax rate increase. The administration presented a 7% tax increase with the scope that we do need to catch up. I mean, this group was aware that we pretty much have done without a community services department for about 2 years now, and the need to rebuild that and to fill the gap. And then the other services that haven't kept in step also need to be brought up to speed. So whether that's making sure we've got enough parks operators where we'd cut back during kind of the COVID budget to the full range, and then with our leadership team making sure that they have the space, time, and resources to look ahead and be able to answer the challenges of a growing community and the high level of services we're demanding and the big asks we're demanding. So that's my take on the budget that administration presented to council. So in the last Monday, we sat down and went through the operational aspect of it. This Monday, we looked at the operational aspect of it again. and reviewed the capital budget. And then Thursday, we hopefully will finalize the budget. It's been a good conversation with all sorts of different, perspectives on the budget. I think council as a whole certainly supports that vision of making sure that we're right sizing the organization and for leadership. We're just, sometimes we may differ in the details, which is kind of what the budget process is about right now. So that's where we're at with the budget. It is all online. So it's available for anybody to read it. So when we're looking at our priorities, I mean, council's decision in the budget process is really what does set our priorities. Without a budget in place, we can't implement any of the priorities that we say we want to accomplish. So it's a really important time right now for Cochrane as council works through the budget. Those are also, if there's a kind of a silver lining in the YouTube world, is the government transparency piece. Our budgets are all broadcast and saved. So if you have a serious interest in the governance or insomnia, you can always pull up our budget debates and watch those. So I think that was an over. What else? Oh, council also attended, the bulk of council also attended the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association conference last week, which is an annual conference. But it's a good opportunity for us to meet with other municipalities, get a handle of different ideas. There's presentations. The Premier spoke, the Leader of the Opposition spoke. There's a bullpen with ministers. Cochrane met with 2 different ministers, and in different sessions involved. So it's a good session, but that was between budget and the conference and getting back up to speed. It's been a busy time since the election. So I think that gives you kind of an overview of where we're at, perhaps as a council right now, as I update the council priorities. So I'll ask if anybody has any questions around that, or if Mrs. Lowe or Mr. Hyman can make sure that I understand my own council priorities accurately. That's always nice to get their input. But first, over to our public members. Any questions about that? Don?
I'd just like to say I am thrilled to hear that they're looking at community services and seeing value in that. As I've talked many times about my concerns around the lack of recreation coming from the municipality. So I'm absolutely thrilled to hear that.
Yes, as Councillor Reid said one time when we were talking about it, it's the glaring obvious. But administration has taken steps. The position is actually advertised and posted right now. So the strategy at this point is to get somebody in that position, and then through the budget process to determine what resources that person will have to flesh out their team. And so we are going to talk a little bit about the budget in a different part of the presentation. But just so that I don't forget, I will bring it up now. I have been championing the creation, as Don has championed to our committee lots, the need for a recreation strategy, a recreation policy to be holistic in how we're looking at our recreation. And so it's not by name in this year's budget, but I have been championing it. I feel it's been heard by my colleagues. And there is some opportunity for us to look at it this year. It's just different items need to fall in line. We need to have that community services manager to lead kind of the file, and then make sure they have the resources to do it. So as this group's aware, we did have the budget for the Midford Park and the Ranch Park plans have been in the budget. That money's been set aside for about 2 years now. So a conversation once we get our new manager in place may be whether we roll those budgets up into a recreation master plan strategy and proceed with it that way. So it's I'm quite pleased to feel some momentum coming back to this important file. So I could share that. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that one. So now that the team is fully with us, I will move away from the council priorities, unless anybody else has any questions about the budget at this point. We can talk about it at the end of the meeting as well. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll just do a motion to accept I know it's out of order and Ms. Loam will probably correct me at some point. Just a motion to accept my council priority report. Peggy's making that motion. Peggy, I saw your hand. Excellent. Thank you so much. All in favor? It's passed unanimously. Okay, so we will now go back to item 4B1, the Horse Creek Sports Park progress update. So Mr. Hyman, over to you.
Thanks, Councillor McFadden, and apologies to everybody. I was having some challenges getting into the meeting. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. We've been doing this for a long time, and for whatever reason, Zoom was not my friend this evening, so my apologies for the delay. Yeah, I wanted to provide a bit of an update on Horse Creek. Of course, we met in August. The team at Urban has still been doing some work, but there's a couple things that I think is really critical for this group to understand in terms of where we are in the process. So right now, and having Ms. Lowe here is great because she is working on this item directly. So she is working with with Rocky View Schools in terms of the purchase agreement. So that is actually with Rocky View Schools right now, and we're working towards and hoping to have that finalized here, because obviously the acquisition of the property is something that is critical to this process. So I'm not sure if Stacy wants to add anything to that, but certainly that is one of the key elements that we need to finalize in our process. And it's really outside the work of this group, but I think it's still important to share exactly where we stand with the group. So maybe I'll just give Stacy an opportunity to share anything if she would like. And then obviously go from there, or if anybody has any questions as well.
Sure. I guess I would just say, just for some comfort, that the only reason it's taking as long as it has is simply because of timing, COVID schedules of the Board of Trustees and that type of thing. The person I'm working with on the file, the superintendent, we are completely in line with what needs to be in the agreement. It's just a matter of finalizing wording and timing and dates of commitments, because there's a purchase agreement and then there's a servicing agreement that the town has to enter into as part of that. So it's just a matter of getting it across the finish line. Nothing of any concern at this point. But just as I said, it's a capacity and timing challenge. I know that the schools have certainly had their fair share of things to juggle through COVID, and I think it's just a result of that. And then of course the elections. So I anticipate to see that through, or at least see that cross the finish line, if not before end of year, early next.
So I'm not sure if anybody has any specific questions for Stacy or myself. The other things since the last time that we met, I've been trying to meet with my counterpart at Rocky View Schools just to share, you know, I know Fiona's on the call, but certainly Colette Winter. And again, her schedule, as many of us have been sort of burdened with quite a bit through the fall. We have just simply not connected. Again, we made a number of changes to that plan, and I think it's important to review those with Colette. So that's certainly some work that's still outstanding. And then the next thing that really is where the bulk of the work that has been occurring since the last time that we met is Urban Systems is working to finalize the site servicing plan. So that's really key to the future of this project, is figuring out exactly how that's going to be serviced. So it's not only the school site, but how you know, the future grading, where the stormwater ponds, where servicing will be provided to provide those critical connections for the vision that we all collectively worked on. So they're anticipating that by the end of the month that they'll have a draft site servicing plan to administration. And then early in December, we have a meeting where we're going to be looking at that. And then that'll really provide us an opportunity to you know, pick up on some of the items that we had last left off on, because I think if you recall, it wasn't only the servicing, but the phasing. So servicing and phasing go hand in hand. As one of the other elements, obviously, that we need to do some additional work on is the governance of this sports park. I think that's critical to the future and just how it's going to operate. And then, of course, I think the biggest item is obviously the financing, and even through the budget process, speaking with council, that becomes a question as and I will give a lot of credit certainly to Councillor McFadden and her efforts to prioritize this project and ask tough questions, certainly of administration and her colleagues, to when there's a lot of user groups who are interested in seeing this move forward right away, and when are we going to see some people out there actively on various sports fields and getting a sense of timing. So this early December, we'd be meeting with Urban to review those phasing options, and really then coming back, because we don't have a meeting in December, just with the timing, for our meeting in January, where we would review the site servicing with this group and the phasing considerations, and then really prioritize some of the different items, because just based on phasing, there's some really critical decisions, and certainly we need your input on that. Then what's anticipated, I'll just check, see if anybody has any questions before I just keep going. Okay. Please don't hesitate if put your hand up. I am watching. I'm trying to read notes and do both. Early February, following our meeting on January 25th, we debrief following the meeting and really discuss the funding approaches and confirm our next steps. And then what we're looking at is really early February would be sort of the council process, where then we would have an opportunity to begin the formal process with council and look for their support of the revisions that we've made and outline what the process is. Of course, one of the important ones that I would share in the budget document that is available online is under capital projects, and I can just share exactly what page it's on. It is on page 106 in the budget document. So again, that will outline what the budget for this project is in the upcoming year. So for 2022, it's $200,000 for site servicing, the design, and then really the substantial component is in 2023, when we anticipate to be moving the dirt and getting things ready in terms of site servicing, and really all the things that are outlined in the purchase agreement that Stacy's working on, and getting the school also ready when they come in, that they are able to proceed with the building permit when their necessary funding from the province is secured. But I think there's some important steps in that process. So certainly if anybody has any questions, there is a detailed page that is all dedicated to this project, which would give more information. But that really is kind of a summary of Horse Creek Sports Park and our progress. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, and maybe just have a little bit of a discussion on and look forward to some of your input.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. I really appreciate it. And I know you're a little bit perhaps concerned that the group might be impatient, but I certainly appreciate the amount of work that is actually going on with this project in balance with everything else. So I really do respect and appreciate all of the work that has gone on with this. So thank you.
Well, the only thing I would say, Councillor McFadden, is it's expectations, and certainly I think it's important. This group's very dedicated, and really appreciate all the input that this group has guided the process. So I know it's been some time since we met, and again, there's quite a bit of work, obviously, with the budget and a number of other things. So I just wanted to, I was hopeful that when we got to this meeting, I would have more to share, but certainly by that meeting in January, we'll have a full picture to share with you, and look forward to your input.
Excellent. Thanks, Drew. Fiona, did you have anything you wanted to share from your lens?
No, but I've learned lots by listening, so I appreciate that. And I think the purchase agreement. I know that's something that's sort of on the radar, and just looking forward to keep the momentum kind of going. I know it's a slow kind of process, but sounds like all the boxes are being checked.
Yeah, and I've been assured the money's in the bank.
I've heard it before, but I am confident. I trust, and I have confidence for sure that will move forward for sure.
Yeah, we know where all the people are. So excellent. Yeah, all right. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. Now from the group, any questions about the project? I mean, we've put in a lot of work and I appreciate that, but I'm doing the scanning. Everybody looks calm, quiet. Okay, great. All right, well then with that then, I really do appreciate the update.
Kara, I'm just going to jump in.
I
I see that Lloyd popped his hand up there just at the last minute, so I'm not sure if you saw that or not.
No, thanks. Lloyd?
Good eye, Fiona. Welcome back. Fiona?
Thank you very much.
No, it's good to see you back again. No, you touched on this a bit too, just coming up with some of the comments that Drew made. Tara, we sure miss Brad Luft. We sure missed a parks manager, and you touched on this a little bit. It'd sure be nice to have that person in play when we start looking at future Horse Creek projects, the Midford area, and the ranch project. We just need a leader, so to speak. That's it.
Yeah, no, and Lloyd, you've identified it exactly. We just need a leader on the file. And that's a big part. I mean, the community services position has been advertised, but it's a big part of what the budget discussion is making sure we have the leaders that in play that can champion these big projects through. So it's a big part of what our budget discussions are and the strategy to do that. Drew and Stacy have both been a big part of the team creating the news design coming forward. So if either of you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would just share that I think, Lloyd, I share your sentiment that Brad was a big contributor to our success from a Parks and Rec perspective and overall. And that's where I think we haven't had all the resources that we had in the past, obviously his departure, but also some of the previous decisions. And that's where certainly a community services section that Stacy is going to be leading, I think, and it's one of the items here. It's the third item, and she's going to speak to that and give you a brief summary. But I think that's really important. And that's one of the things that if you look at the overall community vision that the previous council, this council, I guess this is, being the same people, that's, you always got to catch yourself on that. But prepared, I think that's such an important document, and that's really what draws a lot of people to Cochrane. Lloyd, I know we've chatted lots about the men's walking group, and so many people gravitate to our open spaces. So it's something that we need to invest in, and that's really what this budget speaks to. Yeah, I don't want to take away from what Stacy wants to share, but certainly that's a priority for us.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
Leah?
Yeah, thanks. Just building on that. I think it's great, and to hear the community services coming back and that you're championing the Planetara. I was excited to hear that, as I'm sure is no surprise to you. So my question is just around we had last talked about the next step being sort of deciding on the leadership structure or the oversight structure of the Horse Creek Park. So will that now kind of fall under the new community services as well to sort of determine what that looks like, or will it now just fall under the community services?
Well, for now, this is falling under Mrs. Lowe's responsibility list, which is rather extensive. And so as we go to the next steps, and that was identified, in the budget, that we do need to, and as Drew, we are going to need to identify like the governance and the phasing and those type of strategies. And I'm as eager as anybody else to kind of get on with it. But we can't set the ship in the direction till we have a boat with some rowers and a captain. So we're getting there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
that makes
we'll I'll let Stacy update more just at that section. But and I understand it all fits together, and I appreciate the question. So, but if nobody else has any more questions on Horse Creek, then Lloyd is going to pass the motion to adopt or to accept that update for information.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, onward to the next item of business, a review of the parks and open spaces capital projects in the budget. So now in the past, and we just did have a gap through the COVID year, this group had an opportunity to work with community services to kind of identify the parks projects and any gaps, and we're a part of that budgetary process. So, we've missed out on that process. Hopefully we can get back to it. But for this year, though, the team's just going to share where the parks and open spaces projects are in the budget and provide any update. And I might provide my lens on that as well. But for that, over to you, Ms. Lowe, I believe.
No, Drew decided he was going to do it, mostly because I was working on some other stuff today for budget. So we decided to divide and conquer, and some of it he's directly involved in. So he's going to provide that update.
So yes, late to the meeting, but you're stuck with me. So I just wanted to kind of briefly review some of the different items. Again, we can share out, and I'm not sure, I want to ask, is everybody how involved in terms of the budget process? And the budget book is available online. So I'm going to reference pages, but I'm not sure if anybody's seen it. We can certainly send it out to you. Councillor McFadden has it right there. I've got mine. I really don't go anywhere out without it through the last 3 weeks. There's notes and lots of adjustments, but on page 75, there's a list of capital improvement projects. And I think that's really a good resource. And then from page 75, it's sort of a summary of where in the book that you can find all the detailed summaries for the different projects. But the ones that I wanted to highlight, and some are impacting this group in the short term, some perhaps in the longer term. One of the more longer term ones that I wanted to highlight, on page 86, there's the Fifth Avenue design brief. And so what this is really intended is, this is a tri-site right at the rodeo grounds. So there's lots of interest in seeing Big Hill Lodge move into this location. Obviously the balance of the property is going to be some open space. So I think that this group, your input is going to be very critical as this moves through the next stages. In terms of what the design brief is intended to do, very much, very similar to the work that we're doing here, is that we would be looking at, okay, how are we phasing this project? Because there's multiple different user groups that are identified within this area. So what the phasing would be. What does governance and the structure look like? Is this something where the town is going to subdivide and sell lands, or is it going to lease lands to different groups? And again, I think the financing obviously will be some of the questions. So when I say it's going to be a longer term project, we are doing the design brief to answer those critical questions. But as this project moves forward and then we start seeing proposed development within this area, I think your input is going to be very critical. We've got a very high level proposed design for the open space and what it would look like. But obviously over time that will evolve, and your input's going to be very critical in that. So maybe I'll just open it to see if anybody has any questions on that. Again, it's not one that we've necessarily talked about a great deal, but I just wanted to highlight it because I think the input of this group is so important. All right, I'll move on page 94 of the document. And again, this is not something necessarily, I think it's an important one for you to be aware of, is the multi-purpose turf field. So this is the proposal, if you recall, the group from Cochrane High School came and talked about the multi-purpose. It was a field and I believe the track at the time, and now it's been modified to just the turf. So they've got a proposal within the budget for the town of Cochrane to provide $600,000. The Rocky View County to provide $600,000, and then the balance of $1.2 million to be provided by a third-party donor, an alumni from Cochrane High, I believe. So there's a number of things that obviously need to occur before this project can move forward. Certainly, I may turn this over to Councillor McFadden to share some more information, but I thought it was just an important item to bring to this group's attention because it does relate to our open spaces and investment and things like that. So perhaps I'll turn it over to Councillor McFadden. I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to share and perhaps your perspective and some of the discussions that occurred through the deliberation process, but I thought it was important to bring up.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. And you're correct. This is one to share with the group for sure. That group did present to our committee. I think everybody remembers that. And so it was brought forward into the budget process, as Drew had said. The scale has changed since it was kind of presented to us as more of a turf upgrade at the high school. With the request from the group was that we would provide, the town of Cochrane would provide $600,000. That Rocky View County would also provide the same, and their funder would pay the balance of, I think, 1.2, and together they would be able to very speedily, within a year, get this new field into play. So council discussed this one as part of the capital plan on Monday. I have some reservations around it, which I shared in council. My priorities for recreational dollars is to support what we already have going on in Cochrane, and then as much as possible, the Horse Creek Sports Park. And I really do feel that $600,000 is a fair chunk of change towards advancing something like that. My colleagues are looking at it as a way of leveraging. If we chipped in $600,000, you'd be getting a $2.2 million project. Is the perspective there? I do have some concerns and some caveats that I've proposed, hinging on my support for it, would be that because none of these things are necessarily settled. For my part, before I would want us to see us release the $600,000, is that this would have to be a project that I always get it wrong. Somebody, if I get it wrong, fix the bumper pad so that rugby can play. And you remember in their presentations to us, they've been very clear that it has to have that proper padding so that they can play. And so for my support, we have to make sure that the field would have that so that rugby can play. That we had an agreement for access, user group access, because this is at the end of the day, Rockview School asset that would be contributing to. So it would be an overall community asset, but it would be an asset that they would own and be under their control. And then finally, that both Rocky View County and the donor would contribute to that amount. So there's a number of different factors in play that are kind of hedging my support, kind of the outlier on where council's at with this one. But again, it's just coming from the lens that if we have $600,000 to invest in Cochrane's recreation, it should go to the broadest possible use. Hedged against the fact that if they can actually move this within a year or two, that's probably faster than we can get a field up at Horse Creek. So these are kind of it's kind of where I'm at on that discussion right now. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity if we can make it happen. And so that conversation was kind of Monday afternoon. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And then of course, this Thursday would be where council will kind of make the final debate and deliberations on the budget, and then final approval in the first week in December, if I don't have my dates wrong. So it's kind of my take on it at this point. I don't know, Ms. Lowe or Ms. Hyman or even Ms. Gilbert, if you wanted to share any comments or perspectives on that one.
Not really. We haven't had a presentation from that group I'm going to say ever, actually, because the presentation we had 2+ years ago was from, the predecessors of this group, and it sort of, morphed into this particular society. So we're, from a Rocky View Schools perspective, from a board perspective anyways, we are still kind of waiting on them to sort of see what their final project is that they'd like to go forward with.
Yeah, Fiona, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Peggy, do you have questions on this one? You're still muted.
Possible. Okay, how about now? I have 2 different mute options. This is crazy. Yeah, I live in Cochrane Heights, and so I've been trying to follow this project, and I don't know what the latest design is. And it sounded to me from conversations with others in the local community that they had downsized their proposal from, it was going to be many different factors and giant lights and, I can imagine the loudspeakers. I'm just thinking as a neighbor to it all. And initially I was super supportive of it, but then I think we need to be careful of not overbuilding something in this neighborhood, which is already extremely busy and small, and the houses are right up against that field. So I'm interested to hear more from the group on what the proposal is now and why it would need to cost 2.4 million. Is that less than their original plan? And is there a simpler version to upgrade the fields that would serve their purpose rather than the full built out scenario?
Yeah, Peggy, it's all good questions. We haven't seen, okay, so the plan that we saw at this group was an extensive program, and part of the words they used was, I think, a festival site, which made a lot of people nervous. The update that then came to council was a much simpler, it's mostly just a field update with, thank you, Fiona, the shock pad. So that, well, I actually have to be corrected. I don't actually know if what they came forward with had the shock pad built into it. So it's a simpler version. At this point, the overall council strategy, as I'm understanding it, is we're prepared to set aside the money to kind of be part of the answer if there gets some momentum to it. But it's, anyway, it's early days on this one. And then, yeah, so if it starts moving ahead, I would fully expect that group would be engaging with the community again and more fulsome. And of course, the school board, I'm sure, will have expectations is there, but I can only speak for my lens on that. Dawn, questions?
So just for clarity, if Rocky View County doesn't support the giving of 600,000, would Cochrane's budget proposal go forward even if Rocky View County doesn't support it? Or are the two tied together?
Yeah, that's the language that I understand council is championing, or the caveats that's going into the agreement was Rocky View County has to be an equal partner, or no. So it's doing our part to be a bit of a green light on the project, but there's a lot of different partners that also need to get on board for this to be a reality in my mind.
So Councillor McFadden, just some part of the discussion on Monday too was having an agreement just to make sure that field use could be for community purposes and things like that. So I think Rocky View is a key component, the private funder as well. So there's a lot of things, contingencies to take care of before this will become a reality.
So any other questions on this one? Okay, I'm just doing the scan and I'm not seeing any. So yeah, with that then we can, Mr. Hyman, look at another project. So
there are some playground equipment replacements. This item is on page 98 of the capital projects. It is to replace and update playground equipment in Matt Kroll Park and West Valley walkthrough play areas. So the intent is really the cost of the equipment, so it's $80,000, and then certainly our park staff would be completing the installation. So beyond that, to be honest, I don't have a great deal of information on this project, but felt that it was important to share with you as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Drew. I'm not seeing any eyebrows really on that one. And then the next and last one's probably the Jim Uffelman review.
Yes, we'd already talked about Horse Creek Park. That was on page 106. Page 99, as Councillor McFadden has shared, is the Jim Uffelman Park review. So I think this is certainly one that this group is going to be a key stakeholder. So the intent is the off-leash dog park. It is recognized as a multi-use pathway through there. There's been a number of areas of conflict over the last number of years. There's erosion on the riverbanks. It is an area that is definitely loved and a key component of our community. But the future use of this area, it would benefit from some additional work to figure out a long-term plan. So that is the intent. There will be lots of community engagement involved with this. And as I said, this group will be a key stakeholder in that project. So it's intended to proceed in 2022, and then certainly the results of that work will come forward to council in the future. So
yeah, and just for information piece, it's a $75,000 project, and so we'll be reaching out to have a third party go through that. And but yeah, there will be a role for this group in those conversations. So get your seatbelts on for that one.
it's a bit of a hot topic.
So
Sarah, I was going to add, I remember when the article came out. Can you hear me? It's Peggy. The article came out saying about this proposal, and you were quoted in it. And I know there's probably a fair bit of debate on social media as well about this consultants. And I just wanted to say, I really think this is the right path to get a external consultant to review it. There's history, there's people holding on to that and saying, this is our spot, and everybody wants a piece of it. So getting an external consultant in to lead this and do it as well as they can is really the right path. So thanks a lot for championing it.
yeah, it's an important one, and like as Drew said, there's a lot of use. It's a much loved space. There's some inherent user conflict in the space, but one of the things I was really glad to see that we were talking about in this is also the environmental aspect. Like if anybody's ever been on there, the banks and the wear and tear on the grass. So a lot of things, and it's and the space of it's going to be pretty much bridge to bridge. So anybody that's been down there probably has a context of what that is. So I'm really glad to see that we're going to have this conversation as a community about how to best use and love and appreciate that space together. So and hopefully I didn't say anything bad in the article. I don't remember.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm reading the budget book online here while you guys are talking, and I don't know who wrote the paragraphs about these projects, but this one is particularly interesting. The way that it's written, it describes how administration informed council that they would include this as in the capital, and this is the background of the project, and then it ends with this sentence: "This is that project." Period.
Yeah, I don't know who wrote it, but you're right. That is quite.
Probably Drew.
I cannot take credit for this one, but we'll just leave that one. So.
Yes. Any other questions on that one? This is that one. Anyone else? I'm just doing the scan. Derry?
Yeah, quick question, not to further muddy the waters, but is that the same area as the proposed on-stream wave facility? Different area?
Yes and no. The wave park concept actually has 3 identified locations that they think is possible. The 22 bridge, this site by the old Iron Bridge at the off-leash dog parking area. And then the 3rd site would be down at kind of the Griffin Road bend where the Griffin barn is. So I'm not like tied into that too much. We did receive an update that they're releasing their results of their public engagement here tomorrow, I think. So that conversation is going to pick up again, but as I understand the wave park discussion, there's 3 proposed sites. It's just the artistic rendering of what they wanted to do was at the Jim Uffelman Park site, and I think it it was probably the wrong drawing to do because it became more about the site than the concept. But definitely a project that is not town-led, just to be 1000% clear on that. So yes and no. Sorry, Derry. Any other comments?
I just put a note in the chat there, Tara. I mean, my intel may not be 100%, although I do know some of the people involved in that surf wave proposal, but that the preferred site isn't along this Jim Uffelman Park area anymore.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, I got just an email this afternoon, I believe, saying that they were releasing the results of kind of their public engagement and they're moving to the next step of that. So this is being led by tourism as a possible way of adding to the economic development and value in our community. So it's something that they're leading, and we'll see, where it goes. But our study is not, to the best of my knowledge, considering any context around that.
It is not.
Yes. Any other questions on this one? I think we're good. Drew, do you have any other?
That's everything. I get to pass the microphone over to my esteemed colleague.
Excellent. So that's a wrap on the capital projects that's in the budget. Like I said, council kind of debated, discussed these. My sense of it overall was that, council was in favor of that, of the capital projects. That's not kind of where our extended conversations are at right now. And hopefully we'll have a wrap on that by Thursday. So with that being said, then we will, Mark, do you want to make the motion to accept that for information? Thank you very much. All in favor? And unanimous. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to item 3, the Community Services Department future. And Ms. Lowe can answer all of our governance process leadership questions.
Well, I'm not quite sure about that, but yeah, so the Community Services Department, as noted, we had a recent reorganization, which resulted in alignment of community and protective services. So what falls within my portfolio now is something that I'm quite excited about given the alignment of the services. So it includes parks and open spaces, FCSS, municipal enforcement, RCMP, and fire, and ranch house events, community events, and culture. So I think that there's lots of opportunity to leverage one another. It's something that I'm really excited about. I think that there's great alignment between definitely the event planning, the whole municipal enforcement support of those, our parks and open spaces, and then of course with the FCSS component, and then the ability to leverage all of the positive community outreach and support that fire services is able to provide. The director position, as Councillor McFadden noted, has been posted. We were able to realize that position as a result of the vacancy in the parks manager, as well as a portion of the reduction in the number of GMs and some other vacancies in the department. So that position has been posted. It actually closed on the 21st. So we are in the process of shortlisting. I am hopeful that we will have a decision made before the end of the year. Of course, we are pushing up into December, which is hard for me to actually believe. And so that has happened. The other thing that we've done within existing budget dollars to try and get the relaunch of a community services department is we've split the parks coordinator into 2 positions. We were able to do that as a result of the a vacancy in the department that we chose to split the coordinator position because it was trying to cover off a couple of different areas. It was covering the day-to-day coordination of the parks operators, as well as that community outreach liaison for community groups function. So we saw the opportunity to split those into 2 roles. The incumbent that was in the coordinator position has chosen to remain, but take the liaison position. So you'll see, if you pay attention to Town of Cochrane postings, there is a parks coordinator position that has been posted. So that would be more of the day-to-day oversight, where the liaison would be more of the, I'm just trying to look at the job description at the same time, so I'm cheating a little bit. It would be more of the parks planning, park standards, coordinating what future parks and playgrounds would require upgrades, just the ability to really focus on some of that and actually work a little bit more closely with the community groups. We have a lot of very active, very passionate community groups, and having the director and this position in place will certainly help us leverage some of that momentum that those groups are able to have, as well as the community associations, this committee, and I think just gives the opportunity to build on some of our, build our neighborhood and our neighborhood connections. I think the community is definitely going to be looking for those connections even more so than maybe before. Coming out of COVID, I think we all realize what we had and what we haven't had in the last 2 years. So I think there's the timing of it, as much as it's been a struggle without a dedicated community services department, I think the timing of the relaunch of this type of area and the ability to put some of these positions in place is going to result in some really great outcomes. They will obviously, we'll be looking at some of the master plans. There is, like was alluded to earlier, there is money in the budget for the 2 specific, as well as potentially some funding to be allocated towards taking that funding and whatever else might be necessary for a future recreation master plan, which I think is definitely something that we have to take a look at. We're also working quite closely with Bike Cochrane. They are very passionate about our trails. So we have entered into, or are in the process of working through a trail stewardship agreement with them as a pilot project, just to leverage their enthusiasm and the workhorse of the volunteer group that they have behind them. They have done some work around the grandfather tree already, as I understand it. I've not been there yet, but my understanding is it's quite great. They're a very passionate group with, as I said, a lot of skill in their team. So I think it's an opportunity to take advantage of that as well. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. I think that was it. I think it's just an opportunity to rebuild that area. And as Councillor McFadden said, part of the discussion at the budget deliberations is the timing of some of the additional resources. So right now we have it planned to bring the manager of planning back in. That would report directly to the director of community services in 2023. Whether or not we're able to advance that earlier into 2022 is obviously dependent on resources. The town as it stands is, as Councillor McFadden indicated, under-resourced from a staffing perspective in multiple areas. And so it's just a matter of prioritizing. So we think it's important to get the director in place first. We have the opportunity to leverage that community liaison position with myself overseeing the area and just trying to pull everybody back together. Certainly, if we were to receive the funding, obviously bringing on a manager would definitely create some additional horsepower, but there's obviously staging and timing that's going to happen where that's concerned. But I do think it's an exciting time. I think it will help towards some of the work that this group is trying to accomplish. And just the alignment with that, I think you're just going to see a little bit more momentum there. That's all I have.
Thanks, Stace. I didn't mean to like let you hang in silence there. I just confirmed.
I'll just keep talking and fill the silence.
Right. I was like trying to hit my unmute button. It wasn't working. Yeah, so Stace, thanks for the overview. Like I said, it's been clearly identified that, you know, we are under-resourced in every, the question is not where, it's just to what extent in every department. And I shouldn't laugh because I've been part of the leadership that's kind of that has, you know, resulted in that happening. A large part of it, of course, was our COVID budget last year, when, you know, the decision of the day was we were responding to COVID. We didn't know what it was going to look like. And we responded to what we were hearing from our residents at the time was, you know, tighten the belts. And so we brought in a 0% tax rate. And that was the decision. It was well received at the time. And you can never predict how the world goes, because a year ago we were in COVID, tighten your belts, hunker down, let's just get through this. ATB is forecasting provincial growth at 4% GDP next year. We've got inflationary pressures. And if you talk, well, Drew's team could tell us better, but even if you look around the town, you can see commercial, light industrial, non-residential and residential businesses and business permits. So we kind of went right from COVID hunker down, get through the storm, to it feels like a boom. And from my lens, we need to make sure that we have the staff resources in place to manage that, make sure it's on our terms, and then make sure that we get the best results out of that desire for people to be a part of the Cochrane story. So, and I'm probably as frustrated, if not more so than anybody else, that a lot of the projects that I wanted to advocate, that this group's wanted to be a part of, have had to wait, because we just haven't had the resources to do anything but the key elements. So I certainly applaud all of the town team that's got us to this point. With any luck, my colleagues and I will get us on the right path in Thursday's deliberation. So one step at a time, but I really am feeling positive we're getting there. Anyone else? Questions on the community services future? Okay, good. So, all right. So then motion, Lloyd's making the motion because I saw him move, to accept the Community Services Department future update for information.
I make that motion.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody in favor. All hands on deck. Thank you very much. It's passed unanimously. Now moving on to the 2022 committee work plan brainstorm. So in the past, the way our work plan has come to us is this group has kind of brainstorm ideas that they wanted to focus on, or that we wanted to focus on as a group. Administration had some ideas that they wanted our help on. So, I mean, our sponsorship work got built into broader policy. And then politically so at one point, council gave us the direction to help out with the setting of the policies for the new dog or off-leash parks in the new neighborhoods. So this group has weighed in various different ways from various different directions. At this point, just because we've had to kind of take our feet off the gas pedal in setting, like in this year, the bulk of our work, of course, was the Horse Creek Sports Park. I don't see in 2022 that this group having a huge role there. APEC will get an update, but as we move into servicing decisions and governance, I'm feeling at this point, but it's open for discussion, that's probably something we want to lean more on our professionals to kind of get us through. I don't know anything about servicing. It is my thought on that. So, but to have a discussion, some of the things I feel we are going to get asked to do is, of course, participate in the Jim Offelman, that conversation But I did want to kind of open it to the group to have an idea about what you would like us as a group to focus on over the next year or two. So I know Dawn has been championing the recreation master plan or a recreation plan of some sort. So I'm doing my best to get us the resources to do that. Lloyd?
You already touched base on a bit on the off-leash dog park. You know, if we had more off-leash dog parks, that takes the heat off the Jim Uffelman Park. And even our brand new park on Highway 22, it's getting very busy. So that tells me we need more space for people to walk their dogs. That's it.
Yeah, no, Lloyd, I hear that, and Drew might be able to weigh it in. We have, as part of the planning for the new communities, we are going to see new off-leash parks come on board. So there's space, and please correct me if I'm wrong, space for off-leash parks in Fireside, South Bow, which that project's been stalled for a while, but would be a significant space, and one in
Heritage Hills,
Heritage Hills, thank you,
Sunset
and
as
one
well.
in Sunset.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've been working on it for years to build it into the community plans. But yeah, you know, for sure we love our dogs in Cochrane. Derry?
Yeah, if we're brainstorming right now, one idea would be to find ways of identifying pathway sections that need acute, like are in need of acute repair. So certain places where there's a lot of erosion, or where there's sharp curves where cyclists find huge root damage to pathways, just things like that. If there's a way that we can work as a group to identify the appropriate sources of input on sections of pathways that need upgrades, whether it's from Bike Cochrane or from the walking group or from dog walkers or whoever it is that uses the pathways extensively, from joggers, people who can point out to the administration and to parks where there's in need of acute repairs to the pathways.
Yeah, Derry, I really like that idea. We did it a couple of years ago, but I really like that idea again to bring the community experience into finding the gap. Because at one time I could tell you when I was pushing kids in strollers where all the stroller barriers were. So yeah, those things that might be something that we could do. I like it. What does everybody else think about a focus on the connectivity gaps? Thumbs up here and there.
I sure like the idea of focusing on conductivity gaps there. That would be a priority for me as well.
Okay. Good. Peggy?
Yeah, I was going to say, if we can't commit to do a recreation plan yet, there's a key piece of information that you guys may already have, which is, I would say, a recreation inventory could be done. It would require some public engagement, some leadership from probably staff that don't exist yet, that are being hired. But there's other jurisdictions that have done this, and it provides a really great baseline for those future conversations. It can include an analysis by the public of connectivity or lack of connectivity, but also where are the special places and what are the activities that people are doing in different places. So it would be geographically focused, obviously. I've been involved in initiatives where you have an interactive mapping exercise that you get the public to contribute to, and then that becomes your recreation resources are then classified in the GIS database. So then you can use that for planning in the future. It's best done. I mean, a lot of city staff would know most of the recreation resources in the town, but it's best done with some public involvement too, because like we were saying, the walking groups and the biking groups, they will know particulars about problem areas or special locations. And some people might not want to share their special locations, which means that won't be considered in future planning. So that's always the drawback. I always relate that to my favorite berry spot. You know, if I'm out on public land, I'm not going to share my favorite berry spot, but then I'm at risk that there might be a trail developed around it.
Yeah, Peggy, I hear your fear. I've got my favorite single track trail, and occasionally I take a picture and people want to know where it is and I don't tell them, which is poor leadership on my side. Lloyd, what are you thinking about priorities or the connectivity gap or the inventory?
As far as the pathway systems go, the men's walking group, we walk every path in town 3 times a week, usually 4 to 5K, and we know virtually every pathway inside and out. And last year, the town, like from Midford Ponds up to the water treatment plant, they did a resurface job there because of all the root extrusions, creating a tripping hazard. And they've been keeping pretty good tabs on that type of thing as regarding safety. And if there's issues that we see, like Brad was my go-to guy as far as there was a deficiency, I would let him know, and it didn't take long before it got repaired. So anyways, that's why I say the pathway system in our town was second to none, and it's being kept up very well.
Excellent. Yes, Lloyd, thanks for feeding that in. And Stacey, if you wanted to, well, I don't know who we pass on those comments to nowadays, but if we could also pass on the job well done comment, that would be great.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Drew, I'll let you go first. I have a feeling you might be wanting to say what I'm about to say. Go.
Well, just asset management is really a critical thing, and just picking up on what Peggy was talking about, whether it's recreation, resources, pipes in the ground, whether it's our fleet of vehicles, any town asset, that's one of the things that really we're prioritizing. And one of the groups with our new structure that will be reporting to me is engineering and asset management. And so I think it's a great idea to have that overall inventory. I think we probably have a fairly good inventory, but certainly we do want to make sure we have a complete one and those regular updates.
That wasn't what I was going to say.
Okay.
One of the things that we are looking at as a result of some of our discussions with Mike Cochran, actually, to give credit where it's due, is there is some funding that's been announced recently. The grant funding has not been actioned yet, so there's no active intake as of right now. But there is a 100% grant for planning purposes, and it is something that we're looking at whether or not we can leverage that grant to look at the Connecting Cochrane document and make them that a little bit more fulsome. So there may be an opportunity to collaborate if that grant, if we do go forward with that and are successful, to pull the committee into that work and the community as well on that front. And then just going back to something that was said earlier, I know Mike Cochran, one of my thoughts is to be able to link them with this group, whatever that looks like. I'm not sure, because there is another active transportation grant that requires funding commitments from the town. And obviously we're a little bit constrained with how many grants we can chase at the moment as a municipality, just simply because of our constraints. But we are looking at what is a reasonable approach. But anyway, in all of that, to say, Mike Cochran has done some work on gathering some of those statistics on what they see, what their group sees as the priority areas. Certainly any of the areas that are still shale or some of the things that they're looking at, they do have a very large plan, but I think it's something that definitely would be or could be scalable and help feed whatever master plans we're looking at. But I do think there's opportunities to leverage and use the data that they've collected and work towards some of the things that are being discussed.
The more the merrier. All right, Leah.
Yeah, I think I support all of the initiatives that have been brought up so far. I think it's great. I think the survey idea and the inventory is great. I guess where my brain keeps going is that we've always focused a lot on like infrastructure and places. And so like, is there an opportunity to focus on the organizations like sport, physical activity, and recreation organizations that are providing services? Like, what are their needs? Or how can we proactively bring them together? Now I know Sport for Life Cochrane is doing some of that, but I guess I'm curious to know, yeah, like what the future holds now too, with the resurgence of, you know, the community services, which is great. And to really, like, there's a huge disconnect, and that sector is really not, it doesn't have capacity because it's volunteer based to kind of create those connections themselves. So I feel like if the survey identifies a gap in a certain age group or a certain socioeconomic group, then we could kind of leverage those partnerships. So, so I guess I'm wondering also is where is the connection to kind of health and wellness and physical activity? And I know that's really a different conversation that we're having in this group, but I'm just curious, I guess, to know from the town, and those of you who work across the town, you know, how can we make better connections, I guess, to health and wellness overall? Like, it's always assumed, sure, we have people out walking, we have great trails. Is that translating to better health for people in Cochrane? Are there groups that are missing out altogether? And all of you know way more about that than like some of us on the committee would. So, so that's just something, yeah, I guess I would turn it back to you to say, like, are there some opportunities there that this group could build on as well? Or maybe that's not the focus of this group.
Well, I do think that there is a fit. I absolutely think there's a fit, and that's one of the things, like I said, that I was excited that you know, bringing FCSS, parks, and events all together, because I think it will speak to exactly what you're talking about, is because they kind of all overlay. So when you're talking about gaps, is it gaps for service or programming provision, or is it gaps for accessibility, affordability, and who's providing them and who's providing what? Where is the inventory of that? Do we know what is happening in the community and where and by whom? And so that's some of the stuff that I'm energized and excited to see, pulling those groups together under one umbrella, what that will actually be able to produce, especially with the addition of resources. So with the addition of a director and that liaison position, and just trying to do exactly like you're saying. And I wouldn't want to minimize the involvement that this group has as well in that, because it is parks and recreation. And I think health and wellness just fits on the recreation side into that. So what the role is, I don't know, but whether it's a stakeholder or whether it's just another connection point. But I do think there's definitely opportunities there in the new year.
Great.
Stacey, I think you're making Leah's night. But yeah, so far what I'm hearing is kind of a need for like a recreation inventory and a connectivity gap inventory, like a physical need gap inventory, and then a programming needs inventory gap analysis. So Dawn, comments, questions, thoughts, genius ideas?
Stacey's making my day too, I have to admit. But building on what Leah was just saying, I think the opportunity with the recreation master plan is when you look at the principles and the vision behind it, Leah, I think it gives you the opportunity to do just that, if that's where we want it to go. And that's, I think, one of the really exciting pieces. But I don't think you can go forward with a recreation master plan without looking at the parks master plan as well, because they're totally integrated. And if you go through the existing parks master plan, which I think was 2012, it certainly needs a relook. And part of that is an inventory. Part of it is, if you look at it, it talks about what people said was important to them. And the majority of what's important to them is recreation based. And it may be sport, but ultimately it's recreation based. It's about health and wellness. Anyway, I won't keep going on because I get so excited about this stuff. But anyway, I think there's a real opportunity there in the recreation master plan to do a lot of what we're talking about today, and then look further down the road at the parks plan and be able to integrate the two, and or maybe do them at the same time, depending on what finances are available. So anyway, that's my two pieces for tonight. Well, I'll actually probably say more, but
on that subject. Thanks, Dawn. Lloyd?
Not right now. Nope.
Okay. Okay, so I think I'm just scanning everybody. Okay, so yeah, what I'm really hearing is an interest in helping with the connectivity kind of question, but really getting into just that need for the recreational master plan to be looking at both our physical space needs and then the programming needs as well. And so a lot of that seems to be championing the need for that recreational master plan, which just seems to be needing more budget every time I think about it. Okay, so that gives some ideas, I think, of where the committee is at. What I'm thinking to do with the next steps on that, because what we've done is that the work plan comes from council. So taking this initial feedback from the group, I'll work with Stacy and Drew and my colleagues to kind of get an understanding over the next couple of months of both council's lens and administration's lens on some of those work plan ideas. And we will flesh that out and bring it back in January. Is that, Stacy, we're still on the same page?
January-ish, late, probably, I'm thinking. Just because I know December, I don't know that we're going to get into the December. So it just depends on when the committee meeting falls, because I'm not really sure when the meetings land in comparison to when council meetings land. But yeah, January, first meeting of February, I think, or the meeting in February would be doable.
As soon as reasonably possible.
You bet.
We will. Okay, great. Yeah, all right. Well, group, thanks for that. I do appreciate it. So with that, we will keep track. So yeah, just we'll accept that information or that discussion for information. Stacy, correct me when I get these wrong about how to do that. But all in favor? Sorry, somebody needed to be appointed to make the decision. Lloyd put the motion on the table, and then I asked for everybody's vote, and everybody voted unanimously. Sadly, it's all recorded, so it doesn't matter what I say. But thank you, everyone, for passing that unanimously. Okay, so moving on to 4C. So the council priorities, I spoke a little bit about. I am just going to expand on it a bit before I let the administration speak to their priorities right now. One of the things that I think our councils and administration is really, anyway, we're having some really straight talk conversations right now. And over the last 10 years, we had a presentation per person. We're actually paying, so to get all these positions to advance all these dreams, we're gonna have to hire people, and that's gonna add to the budget, which, if you're talking 7%, in my time in council in 14 years, we've never even talked about a 7% tax increase. But we've been having some really good conversations recently. They ran a report, and I think in the last 10 years, you actually pay less per person in tax this year than you did 10 years ago. So we've been able to develop, I think, really good value for the tax dollar, but there have been years when we haven't even kept up, with inflation. So our growth is what's allowed us to keep the taxes down, but it's not been kind of an honest assessment of how we're paying our way. So we've been having those conversations, looking to the future. What is the type of organization we need to make sure that we're providing the services that we need, the leadership that we need, planning for the future, but also we talk about reserves, which is municipal finance language for savings, to make sure we have enough savings in the bank to look ahead at large capital plans that we're going to need, or replacement plans and asset planning. And so our organization, having watched it, been a part of it for the last 14 years, is really evolving and maturing. But you're making sure that we're being as mature and thoughtful about the budget and making sure that we can be as sustainable as possible. So these conversations have changed a little bit this term. I think it's one of the values of having a full returning council, is to be able to understand the budget process. So anyway, so that's where we're coming from in this. So, but do be assured that no one on council is looking forward to a tax hike in any way. But I certainly feel that everybody's vision is to make sure that as a community, we're getting as much value as possible out of every tax dollar. So these budget deliberations, I think, have been very thoughtful. But as you see that roll out, that's kind of my take on where we're at with our council priorities again. So I will leave that with you as my take on that, and then turn it over to Stacy and Drew for their administrative priorities.
I'll jump in because Drew didn't unmute yet. I think fundamentally, one of the key priorities for the team as a whole is just beginning to implement that organizational vision. That's the build out of our organization and making sure that we have the right size organization to support the community that we are now. Obviously, within fiscal constraints and prudency. We are intending to do a strategic plan, hoping to do that in 2022. The last Town of Cochrane strategic plan, I think, was 2018, possibly 2019. So there is an intent to undertake that process with the organization and council. Obviously, the station will be coming online in 2022. We have the final or the build out of the new protective services building. So that new building is certainly well underway. That's supposed to be anticipated to come online summer 2023. So that's within my portfolio, as well as just like I said, honestly, for the next probably 6 months to a year, the main priority in my area is going to be that community services section and getting them well underway. The other arm of my portfolio, which is municipal enforcement, RCMP, and fire services, they've got pretty sound leadership in those areas. We are looking not to add resources in 2022 to any of those. 2023, there is a plan to potentially look to add RCMP members, but of course that's all budget dependent and dependent on what the province is doing with the policing, and then continued advocacy for our community on the EMS side is another thing that's a priority for myself. The other things that I know some of the other areas are looking at is in finance, they're definitely looking at whether or not there are technology innovation processes that they can bring to improve customer service and the customer service experience, and whether or not there's opportunity to provide the public with online access to certain things that right now we don't have that capability. And so they're looking at that as well. But in that, there will also be the opportunity at the station. The intention is that people will have access to all those services as well at the station downtown. So that's the new Transit Hub Innovation Center. And outside of that, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but I'll let Drew add.
I just have a couple brief things to share. When the budget came out, we did have an announcement. Obviously, transportation is one of the main priorities for us and for council, and we've been doing a lot of work with the province to include some critical areas on the Highway 22 1A project or interchange project, and so we have successfully got the extension to Sunset Boulevard. So that is additional $10.5 million to that project. So they will be starting that project next year. And really just to share with everyone, the province's project initially was to be focused, and when you think of going north, it was just to go north of Ranch Road. And we advocated, certainly I think the mayor and council, our intergovernmental department, as well as planning and others had a number of different meetings to get that extension, which we refer to as Gap 2 to Sunset Boulevard, as that's one of our largest communities, if not the largest. And the other portion was down on Highway 1A, our project, which has just completed the first phase. The second phase is to go just past Fifth Avenue. And then the province's project was at Big Hill Creek. So there's a second gap in there, which we refer to as Gap 1, and that's was a $9.5 million project. So we were able to get that added in by the province. So really, you're looking at $20 million of additional investment through the efforts of the town. And I think it's just going to be such a huge win. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of traffic disruptions next summer once the project begins. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a $75 million investment in the community, which is huge. So really excited about that. The only other thing, I thought Stacey did a fantastic job sort of outlining things, but If you go into your budget book on page 3, there's the guiding principles behind the budget. I don't know if we really chatted about that, but I think it's just important as if you do want to take some opportunities or you have questions. There are 5 principles that were the guiding principles for us to follow, and we've really kind of circled back on these throughout the process. So we really wanted to budget for the size we are and not the size we used to be. We wanted to maintain the current service levels. Obviously, we've grown a tremendous amount. I think Catherine, who is our Executive Director of Corporate Services, did a phenomenal job indicating sort of tax rate and municipal price index and the impacts on our community. And really for us to maintain the current service levels, we've added so many parks, pathways, roads. It's just not possible. Our staff, like our community's grown 112%. In the same period, our staff has grown about 18%. So the numbers don't lie in that respect. So it's really put some downward pressure on our organization. We want to consider the long-term financial viability of the town, obviously improve organizational resiliency. And I think that's what Stacy talked to as our main priority, is that org vision and implementing that. And then really align and support council's strategic priorities and policies. So those are the 5 guiding principles behind the budget. I can appreciate everybody looks at it and says 7%. How can this be? But I think there's a great deal of work has gone into this, very similar to the org visioning. And we're putting ourselves in a good position, not only for the future of the community and to support the services that we provide to the residents, but just to put the town in a really good position for the future. So that would be my summary.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, team. I really appreciate it. It just is like Drew was highlighting, the population has grown, and then just practically number of parks and pathways has grown, and then we haven't, we still have the same number of people running lawnmowers, or at least not a whole bunch more of them. But one of the examples of how we've had to expand, so we now have an intergovernmental affairs manager on the list, and that's been a position that's been filled, I think, for the last year. But prior to that, we didn't have anybody doing that and able to focus. And it's and as Drew was saying, that overall project, the 1A22 infrastructure upgrade that we're seeing over the next couple of years, it's a $75 million investment, and there's gaps, right? And so the municipality's ability to very deliberately leverage and to lobby and to be on equal footings has been so important. We're one of the few municipalities that when you go up to these AUMA conferences, we go up with a plan. We're deliberately reaching out to ministers and and have an ask. It's very well received. And then intermunicipally, it's gotten more complex. I mean, we have the CMRB. So that's external relations work that really has to be done, and Rocky County as well. And all of these organizations, the City of Calgary, if we want to be equal players at the table, we have to have resources that can represent our needs. And so that's just one of the positions that we've had to evolve in a fairly rapid period of time that has already paid dividends. So anyway, just an example of kind of how fast we're growing up and the type of changes that we're having to make. So when people are, unnecessary government services, in order for us to get best value and to represent you well, we need those resources and to be able to walk into the room and be ready for it. So just even having that one position has made a huge difference. So, okay, so that was the administrative priorities. Questions from our group for our amazing team? No. Okay, good. In that case, Leah, thank you for making the motion to accept their information. All in favor? It's passed unanimously. Thanks you. Okay. Committee priorities. We did kind of talk about this a little bit, I think, in the brainstorming, but turning it over to the group. Is there anything else you would like to add to that? You may have covered it off. Okay. Oh, Dawn?
way back when, there was some discussion about the old KFC site that's now the staging area for the construction, about that becoming a tourist information center and us having a role in talking about what the green space around that might look like. Is that gone that way of-
Yeah, well, so the station, and I was actually laughing at myself when Stacy was talking about it, because I started thinking that everybody was going down to the police station for these things. So I'm gonna have to catch up on our language. But the new Transit Innovation Center that's being built right now is gonna have a lot of that. You're gonna be able to buy your bus passes, do a lot of your town services there, and then the tourist information. The current tourist information, where it's at right now, we are current discussions going to continue that lease for like another year, but then that's going to move over to the station and be based out of there.
So
When
what's
it
going to
comes,
happen with the old KFC site? Is it the intent to turn it into a green space, or has there been any discussion around that? No? Okay.
no, I have some personal private visions, but nothing that council's landed on. So yeah, for now it's a staging area. We're probably going to be using it, I imagine, for a while as a staging area. But yeah, there's no plans at this point for the future of those lands, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah,
Stacy, Drew?
I think there's a lot of ideas of things that can be put there. There's been a lot of talk about the opportunity for affordable housing and what that might look like. But in the interim, for now, there are no concrete plans. I think it's something that certainly probably Drew's team, in combination with mine, will probably be looking at some point over the next couple of years. But no immediate plans outside of the fact that there will be a ice rink there again this year. Where safe to do so, but that won't be until January, I believe, is the intention, based on construction material needing to be moved.
Okay, no, that's great. The other question I had was, whatever happened to the sponsorship policy?
That was what, 2 years ago, right?
Oh, at least, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I guess Stacy will have to look into it, because I know it was being built into a broader policy, and communications was using it, but I
Okay.
don't have a recent update. I'm
Not
sorry.
important, but just wondered.
The
Derek,
other thing,
Oh,
the only
sorry.
other thing, actually, the sponsorship policy triggered me. Sorry, Councilor McFadden. One thing that is on my radar that needs to be updated is the public art policy. So there may be an opportunity for that to come for some input to this group as well. I see that there's a fit there for at least some feedback on whatever an update to that draft might look like.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Derry? Mark?
Councillor, at one point you had basically said it as an aside that down by the Griffin barn, there might be the possibility of having a takeout for drift boats or canoes or kayaks or something of that nature. Has that ever gone anywhere? Do you recall that?
Type thing. So yeah, so again, not a town initiative as I understand it, and I think Drew is in much closer conversations than I am on this one. That was part of the vision of the Wave Park conversation, I believe, and part of the tourism conversation is something that I had understood that they were championing as part of that. So not as a town-led initiative per se, but I believe we're probably aware of a parking option in the area. Drew, did you want to speak to any of that?
Yeah, so we did have some discussions with the developer of building a parking area in there that could be utilized to provide access. And I know this summer there was a group doing some rafting tours, and they were going from upriver at the water treatment plant and taking out at this location. So it's something that they were exploring and looking to formalize. Again, that developer has had some other ideas in terms of development on their property, but Mark, as you had talked about during our last meeting, they initially had looked at the barn as potentially to be rented for different events, and you could get bikes or canoes, kayaks, and then go upriver and come back. So I think it's still something that they're exploring, but we haven't heard anything about that recently.
Very good. I think our rivers are our river is very underutilized, and it'd be great to have something like that. I hope that with the discussion regarding the dog park, that we're able to, and we discussed the stabilization of the bank, hopefully we can also incorporate some of the fish habitat aspect of those modifications as well. Thank you.
That's a good
One
point.
thing too that I would share, I haven't seen the results of the wave study, but I understand from some of the feedback that while there may be sort of two sides to the issue, it's sort of some people are very much for it, some people are very much against it. The one focus that everyone has common ground, Mark, very similar to your comments, is the desire to have access to the river and the importance and how underutilized the actual river is. So I think that's something that we'll be exploring further.
If
Very good.
only we
Thank you.
had the staff. It's supposed to be funny. I find it funny. Okay, so I think, does anybody else have any questions kind of around or comments around our priorities as a committee? Thank you, Leah. I appreciate it. Lloyd?
Yes, the wave park, a lot of controversy like Drew just explained. Is it something that we will be looking at ourselves?
I don't know. We could ask them to come and present to the group. Is that something we as a group would like to hear from?
I don't know. I just thought it's something that, it's part of recreation and such. And like it was just alluded to, as far as the access to the river, you have the 22 bridge and that's about it. And like Mark said, we're underutilized, and that's a great place to have it, is back around the corner there. But here again, the wave park has maybe had dibs on that too. So we'd like to get their input.
Yeah, no, I think we could invite them.
The one thing that I would say, and again, and I haven't had an opportunity to go through all the survey results, but one of the conversations I was having was there's a potential grant opportunity to do some of the engineering work and get some additional information. So Lloyd, I would say it's very early in the River Wave proposal. They will be doing a great deal of more engagement, and I would anticipate that they would be back with this group at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm doing a scan. Have I got everybody so far? Looks good. Okay. Okay, in that case, motion to accept the committee priority discussion for information. Derry's making that motion for us. All in favor? Approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and then roundtable. Poor Stacy. I told her, I said, no, this will be a quick meeting and we'll be over, and I run tight meetings and we'll be out of here by 8. So sorry.
Okay, I had tea with caffeine.
Okay, roundtable. Why don't we now? Sorry. Usually what happens if we've got the Spray Lakes rep here, we usually give them an opportunity to present or share their information, or if we've got Justin from the Ag Society to present, is usually a time for them to do that. Fiona, did you have anything from the school board, and are you the chair again?
Yeah, I'm the chair again, and thank you. So from a school, like there's not anything really from a Parks and Rec kind of piece to update on. We are, as you commented there before, Tara, just after the election, we do have a couple of new members, and so spending some time onboarding and building our team as a board, and have some work ahead of us. Our schools are open for community use, which is good, and we're continuing to invite groups in, obviously following all of the protocols, and so that sort of opens up some rec space for the community, which I know was needed. We will be implementing in all of our schools and facilities proof of immunization and proof of immunization or a recent negative test. And so that will impact community users a little bit because they will be, expected to follow those protocols as well. So it's nothing new in our province, right? It's been in place now for a couple of months, but it'll be new for the school division starting in January for anybody, any adults accessing our building. So just something to be aware of if you are involved in community groups who are using Rocky View Schools facilities.
Okay, thanks for that, Fiona. I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Fiona? Nope. Okay, great. Does anybody else? Lloyd, your walking group is walking lots, covering lots of miles.
We are doing well. Just to update, because we didn't have a meeting during the summer months. August, we had 168 walks. September, we had 155 walks. October, we had another 168 walks. And like I say, they average between 4 and 5K on our wonderful pathway systems in this whole town. It's great to see.
Well, I'm glad you guys are getting out. I'm jealous because I'm not walking that much.
Okay, I have one question for Karen relating back to Drew referring back to the budget. Is the budget a PDF document that could be passed on to us? Or should I just go to the town website?
I can send it out to you, Lloyd.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll send it out. I'll send it out to the whole group.
Very good. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
One
Karen.
last item in the new year, hoping where COVID's at and maybe it'll disappear. Maybe someday we can have an in-person meeting back up at the ranch house.
Yeah, no, as soon as we'll have to do an evaluation kind of from the municipal side of that, but I'm certainly with you that as soon as it's safe and reasonable to do so, I'm certainly missing the in-person. And I think 2 years ago, we even had like a Christmas party, which we're not having this year. So no, I miss you all. And as soon as we can, I think reasonably and safely get back to working together, I think it'd be a great thing to make happen.
Thank you.
Peggy, or Leah, anybody have any updates? Okay, great. Oh, Derry?
This is not really an update, and I don't want to reopen the conversation we just had, but something occurred to me when we were talking about the committee work plan and we were brainstorming, and we'd been talking, like Peggy had this a good idea about doing a Parks and Rec inventory if we can't do an updated plan or a master plan, if we do like an inventory. And then there was a discussion of the recreation side. So it just occurred to me that we could add another layer in there. So if we do an inventory of the physical infrastructure, we'd also need to look at how it's being used. So we'd look at the infrastructure use, and then in addition to that, the programs and services being offered that are more formal. Because for example, I didn't know about the men's walking group, for example, until Lloyd started bringing it up. But that gives a whole layer of context about how our pathways are being used and who's using them. So we know we've got great pathways and they may be in need of repair in some places and they may be in need for greater connectivity in others. But knowing who's using them and where is really important. And that's one of the things that maybe we could look at if we do discuss in the future more of a planning perspective and doing like inventory. So adding the infrastructure, use, and programs and services.
Yeah, Derry, I certainly hear where you're at. And thanks for that. So I made a note, and I think the team is too, and we will kind of try to build in what we can. So it's a really valid point. Leah, I see your post, but did you want to verbalize that too?
Sure. I guess we're just really excited about the opportunity to, as Fiona said, to be able to be back into the schools and also to deliver, sort of connect those local sport groups with the schools. We also have an opportunity in the local rec facility, actually at Bears Paw. We're hoping we can bring more to Cochrane, but to build out the multi-sport programming. And the idea behind it is if, you know, a child gets to try ultimate frisbee or soccer or whatever it is, that then we connect them back to their community so that they can, or to the local sport organization so that they can then sign up for that program. So there's just a lot of connectivity that happens with it. And one of the things we're kind of struggling with is that a lot of the local sport organizations really talk about wanting to have multi-sport opportunities and, you know, more intro sessions. But then when you put out the call for coaches, you don't get anything. And I think there's just a capacity issue there and a support again of how do we build up so we can create maybe mentorship programs for coaches and even recreation leaders. So I think there's great opportunities here to kind of build that out so that we have more of a network of coaches and leaders across the community that can fill all the gaps.
Perfect. All right, Leah, thanks for the update. I do appreciate it. And Karen said she's going to send out the budget. Perfect. Okay, anyone else? Last chance? No? Excellent. Okay, so then I'll just call for a motion to accept that for information. Mark is making that motion. Correct? Good. And all in favor? Passed unanimously. All right, group. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. There is no meeting in December, so we will be looking to get back to everybody in January. So you get to be the very first people I wish Merry Christmas to. So thanks for your work and your patience and your energy to being part of the solution. I really appreciate it. And we will be in touch, but enjoy the Christmas season as you can. And I'm really looking forward to working with this group in the new year. So anyway, everybody have a great night and we will catch you later. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.